Now we will find out whether or not Iran is able to match its words about its willingness to show that its program is fully peaceful with the verifiable actions and verifiable decisions that are necessary to accomplish that goal.
Down to business, if you will. Our guest was the American ambassador to Bahrain from 2007 until 2011. Also, former principal deputy assistant secretary to the State Department for Education and Cultural Affairs. It's a pleasure to welcome Adam Ereli to MidPoint. Ambassador, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to talk about Iran in a moment, but let me just get to Egypt first of all, right off the gun, because that's what a lot of people are talking about. The fact that Egypt is talking about making and creating this wonderful sounding cooperation relationship in the Middle East, get everybody together, fight ISIS, make it all work. Is there any reason to believe that with all the religion, all the politics, all the different government that's involved in the Middle East, any sort of alliance like this could last more than a day or two? It seems impossible.
Yeah, I share your skepticism. I think theoretically it's possible. And actually, you know, there are a number of countries that have common interest in this. Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and they have both the interest and the capability. I mean, they're all large countries with very capable militaries. And they all face common threats. The Muslim Brothers, Libya for Egypt, the Houthis in Yemen for Saudi Arabia, ISIS for all of them. So it makes sense, and certainly would be consistent with what the United States wants to see, which is the Arab countries taking more of the burden for security away from us and onto their own shoulders. But as you suggest, the devil is in the details, and would they be able to create a force that is both functional and operational with joint command? I mean, that's a very sophisticated proposition that I don't see happening anytime soon. But to hear a leader like Sisi call for it, I think is a positive development.
Does Sisi have the power in order to call for it? Does he have the relationships, if you will, in order to call for it and make it work? And in your opinion, out of all of these different countries who may get involved in helping take the fight away from America, who's the one we can trust the least?
Well, I think that Sisi definitely has the authority and credibility both with the West and with the Arab states. Why? First of all, because he's a military officer and one that is respected. 2, because he is firmly in control of Egypt. 3, because Egypt is the largest Arab country with the largest military. So, you know, if he's on record as saying we need to do this, that's a pretty important thing. And then 4, frankly, because Sisi and the leadership of Saudi Arabia and the leadership of the UAE, which are really the most capable militaries in the region, all see eye to eye on both ISIS and the threat from other terrorist groups. So, you know, I think Sisi's call is credible. But as I said, the devil's in the details, and can the staffs, the military staffs, work together to pull together a coherent military force that really offers a deterrent against the crazies like ISIS and the Houthis and others?
Well, let's look at it then. And again, the second part of my question, with about a minute left before we take a break. In order to deal with all of these crazies, you put together all of these different groups and all these different governments in the Middle East. Which one would you think is the least trustworthy that when it comes to putting everybody together, they'll break sooner or later, or something will happen and they'll just fly away?
You know, I think the United States has had pretty good experience with all the countries in the Gulf in the terms of working together and having military, you know, operations. I think the one that, and I wouldn't say trustworthy is not the word I'd use, but reliable is obviously Yemen, just because that place is in a state of chaos. So you really can't count on the Yemenis for following through, not because they're not necessarily of goodwill, but just they don't have the ability.
They don't have the ability, and right now they don't have the government either. That's something else to consider. Ambassador, if you would, please stand by just a few moments, because we're going to come back and talk about ISIS. They like to make it all about religion and God, when in essence, they are increasingly showing themselves to be all about anything but religion, using it as a front for their terror, and the world keeps buying their lie. Plus, we'll also talk about what is happening in Iran and giving the Iranians 10 years to create their nukes. That and so much more when we continue right here on MidPoint. Welcome back to MidPoint. The former Principal Deputy Assistant Secretary to the State Department for Education and Cultural Affairs, Ambassador Adam Ereli. Ambassador, let me now touch on Iran, if you will. We're talking about a phased U.S.-Iran nuclear deal that would basically give the Iranians the chance to create a nuclear weapon within 10 years. Is this just incredible folly here, or is the United States just doing this and just playing for time?
Both. I think dealing with Iran is like dealing with the devil, and you should just know that you're going to get burned. That's number one. Number two, having said that, we definitely have an interest in postponing or delaying their capacity to develop a nuclear weapon. I mean, it's my view that they have that intention, they're determined to do it, and that eventually they will do it. So the question for us is, how do we buy ourselves more time? And I think that's what this deal is designed to do. I mean, the fact of the matter is, I don't think in the modern history, the international community has successfully prevented any state from developing nuclear weapons when that state is absolutely determined to do so. The only case in which we succeeded was South Africa, but South Africa voluntarily gave up its development program. But Pakistan, India, China, Israel, they've all done it. And they all did it despite very strict international sanctions, and I don't think Iran is going to be any different. So the question is, how can we kick it? How can we buy ourselves more time? That's what this deal is designed to do. In the end, it is folly, because a nuclear-armed Iran is, frankly, should be one of our worst nightmares.
Now, what about this? Because there's now a report coming out that the Mossad spy agency in October 12, there's documents now leaking out saying that they had a very less alarmist view of the Iranian nuclear program than Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu did. He appeared in front of the United Nations with a bomb and basically put together a cartoon drawing, if you will, and said, we are this close. Now it turns out that the security agency says we are not that close. Who do we believe in all this? Because it certainly seems the Prime Minister is pushing it forward to protect Israel. Meantime, we've got some people telling us that the Iranians are not even close to this. 10 years may as well be 100 years for them.
Yeah, I would say two things to that. Number one, the Iranians are determined to develop a nuclear weapon, so let's not split hairs. Number two, it's interesting, there was a press conference today in Washington in which one of the Iranian opposition groups, the National Council for Resistance of Iran, has revealed a new secret Iranian test site in Tehran that was hidden from the United Nations and hidden from inspectors and hidden from the IAEA, and that's designed to do experiments on advanced centrifuges. So I think the best answer to your question lies in Iranian behavior. I mean, look, they consistently lie, deceive, and hide their nuclear program. And if their intentions were peaceful and honorable, we wouldn't be having this problem. So whether it's a year or 2 years or today or tomorrow, the fact of the matter is we're dealing with a determined and capable enemy that threatens our long-term interests.
And we're going to talk about that parallel nuclear program after the break with a guest who actually was at that press conference today. So that's something else for our guests and for you also to perhaps be aware of. 90 seconds I have left. Let me hit something else here. ISIS, they keep telling us that it's all about the Islamic religion, that it is all about the faith. Yet they recently abducted dozens of Christians in Syria. They seem willing to go after people of just about any stripe whatsoever. Do we need to drop this whole concept that anything that comes from ISIS's lips is about religion and just start calling them for what they are, just a band of killers and a band of international thugs?
Well, that's certainly what Muslim religious authorities are doing. I mean, you have the Sheikh of Al-Azhar, which is the leading cleric of the Sunni faith, and other religious leaders have all publicly disavowed ISIS and said they don't represent Islam. They are a perversion of Islam. They say they speak in the name of Islam, but that's absolutely not the case. So any good Muslim, any person of faith, no matter what their faith, Muslim, Jewish, Christian,
how about any just logical
Buddhist,
person?
Hindu,
How about just any person with common sense?
Sure, is going to tell you that these guys are just perversions of any sense of human decency and any religion. So I think we can all agree on the point that you make.
It's time to maybe start calling them for what they are, and maybe it's time for everybody to start using the words thugs and criminals and hoodlums and whatever else you want to use.
Instead of
because
saying
it pretty
Islamic
much fits.
State, instead of saying Islamic State, say the crazy state.
Yeah, well, that might not be a bad idea, actually, because I think it would fit perfectly. Unfortunately, what doesn't fit perfectly is the clock. We're all out of time. Ambassador Adam Ereli, it's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Thanks for your comments. We'll do it again soon.
Pleasure.
All right, take care. We mentioned this. Benjamin Netanyahu is never one to back down from anything, but he may have to eat his words. His own intelligence agency questions his facts about Iran. Plus, a press conference held today inside the Beltway talking about a parallel nuclear program in Iran. The people who issued that report, our guests, and we continue right here on MidPoint.